I got pregnant by accident after drinking. There is no money to abort the baby, and no money to give birth to the baby. My pregnancy was becoming more and more obvious day by day, and I could no longer hide it. I could only borrow money from my roommate who had a gang background. He played with the knife in his hand, with a sinister look on his face. I can raise a bastard, but you have to tell me who that damned man is. How should I tell him that the damned person was himself? 01. When Bob came back, he was covered in wounds and had a roast duck. He casually placed the roast duck on the table, pulled out my chair and sat down. Please apply the medicine to me first. Judging from his appearance, he is probably going racing again. You need to go to the hospital. No need. He took off his shirt without hesitation. It's just a superficial wound. I sighed, put down my pajamas and wash basin, and took out the medicine box as usual. As soon as I took out the cotton swab, Bob suddenly grabbed my wrist. What? He raised the corner of his mouth at me and pulled me without much force. I fell onto his lap. Standing is so tiring. The smile is bright and unruly. Bob also had some scratches on his legs, but his expression didn't change at all as I sat on him. Whatever you want, I'm not the one in pain anyway. After applying the medicine, I struggled to get up and organize the medicine box. He didn't force me and stood up to rummage through the dishes on my table. Bob has a habit of only eating food that is placed on the table. No matter how expensive and exquisite the packing box is, in his eyes it is just a carrying container. People who eat out of containers are merely surviving, not living. The remarks are very consistent with his status as a young master. But this doesn't stop him from paying a higher price every time to use the best packaging boxes. I wailed in my heart countless times, how nice it would be if you could just give me this money. I would be willing to carry the plate all the way back to him. I can hardly survive. What's this? Hearing the sound, I turned my head and saw Bob holding a test strip in his hand. The 2 bars on top are bright red. My eyelids twitched. Oops, forgot to deal with it. Before the brain can react, the body has already taken action on its own. I quickly grabbed it and threw it into the trash can. For the flu test. Oh. He raised his eyebrows. Why doesn't it look like that? The test kits now look like this? So, don't get so close to me, you can get infected. Bob snorted and moved closer to me, holding the back of my neck. The tips of their noses are touching, their breathing is entangled. Am I afraid of this? As he spoke, he tilted the angle a little and pressed it down a little bit. I turned my head away and his lips just brushed my ear. Bob froze. Don't want to? It's not like we haven't kissed before. That was a misunderstanding. 3 months ago, when Bob first moved in, he got up at night and stumbled into my bed. I woke up in shock and wanted to remind him, but he held me and kissed me for half an hour. Afterwards, he explained that he was not used to the environment and thought he was still at home and that the person lying there was his ex. I accepted this reason. Later, in the bathroom, you didn't refuse either. That time it was my fault. When I was washing my hair, shampoo flowed into my eyes, and they were too stinging to open. I stumbled around to grab a towel and accidentally fell on Bob. We just happened to kiss each other, and then we continued kissing. Bob didn't have the patience to argue with me. He grabbed my chin and forced me to look at him. Okay, let's do it again by chance. This time it was unfortunate. I dry heaved. Bob was stunned, in disbelief. You think I'm disgusting? Of course not. I wanted to deny it, but ended up retching again. The atmosphere was subtle and stagnant. This is just an objective physiological reaction that cannot be controlled and has no other subjective meaning. Bob obviously doesn't think so. He let go of me and took 2 steps back. I tried to save the situation. Sorry, you should find someone else. Somehow these words ignited the anger in his eyes. He snorted coldly, gritted his teeth, grabbed his clothes, turned around and walked out. I was afraid that he would play those life-threatening games again, where the car drove in front and the soul chased behind, so I couldn't help but remind him, you still have injuries. The response I got was the door slamming shut. I stood there for a long time, then slowly sat down and tied up the garbage bag containing the pregnancy test stick. Bob didn't know that in addition to those misunderstandings and coincidences, we also had an accident. That accident added a life to my body that shouldn't have existed. Oh, it hasn't taken human form yet, so let's just consider it a thing. 03. How can a man get pregnant? This is what I asked the doctor. The doctor said that my body structure is quite special. In order to help me understand more easily, he also called up relevant cases and drew diagrams. But I didn't hear a word he said. Because my sky is falling. My brain was buzzing and I could only see the doctor's mouth opening and closing. Finally, the doctor explained that the baby was too young to be vaccinated and that we had to wait at least another half a month. I didn't have the courage to tell him that, after I made the appointment with the expert and the examination, I was completely broke. He transferred all the internship salary he had just received to his family. He would never give back the money he had spent. Fortunately, there is still half a month to save money. Fortunately, Bob left me some roast duck, so I won't go hungry tonight. I was sure in my heart that he would not return to the dormitory tonight, but after much hesitation, I still stayed halfway. Bob mentioned it before, this place uses baby ducks, so the meat is tender and juicy, the skin is crispy, and it's topped with caviar. He tried to hold back, but couldn't help but picked up another piece. Just as I put it in my mouth, the door suddenly opened, and I was so scared that I almost choked to death. Bob was carrying a large plastic bag, and his face didn't look much better than when he left. He glanced at the remaining roast duck and said mockingly, "You think I'm disgusting, but you don't think the roast duck is disgusting?" I swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and explained in a hoarse voice, "I really don't mind. I just felt unwell." Bob's expression softened a little. "Come and take your medicine." It turned out that he went to buy medicine. "I thought you wouldn't come back." "Where are you going if you don't come back?" "Your own home." Bob's eyes darkened, and a hint of coldness flashed across them. "It's over." I was a little surprised. Falling apart again? Bob and I were assigned to the same dormitory as our freshman year, but we didn't actually move in until the second semester of our senior year. The rich young man who started out as a gangster doesn't even look down on the single room in school, let alone a double room. He didn't come to live here because he fell in love with the place suddenly, but because he had a conflict with his family. His decisive father suspended his credit card and confiscated the property, so he had no choice but to do it out of anger. His good friends were afraid of the pressure from Bob's family and did not dare to help him. As an outsider with whom I had no previous contact, I was not restricted. I squeezed out a little money from my pitiful internship salary, secretly used prohibited electrical appliances, and made delicious food for him in different ways every day. This kind of mutual support went on for a long time until his housekeeper couldn't stand it anymore and secretly supported him with all his money. By last month, the relationship had almost eased. Bob's family also held a grand birthday party for him, and Bob invited me. The accident happened on that day. Bob and I had sex in an unconscious state and we stayed together all night. Less than a month had passed and they broke up again. Seeing that he didn't want to talk more, I didn't ask any more questions. Bob bought a bunch of antibiotics. It is reasonable to suspect that eating these will make you sick even if you are not sick. I subconsciously covered my belly and noticed that Bob's eyes also dropped down, so I quickly looked away. "I've already taken my medicine tonight." "Have you eaten?" "What did you eat?" I made up something, thinking he definitely didn't understand. If we eat more, it might cause conflict. Bob stared at me for a long moment and nodded slightly. I thought he had compromised, but I didn't expect him to say something shocking. "Carter, I'm going to touch you now." She opened her mouth, but before she could utter a word, her forehead rested against the back of his hand. A slight cool feeling penetrates into the pores and seeps into the blood. "Your body temperature seems to be a little higher than mine." Bob took his hand back and said, "If you can't lower it, you have to change the medicine." The feeling of our foreheads touching each other lingered on my forehead, and I was still a little confused. He was a willful and unruly person, but after retching twice, he actually restrained himself and followed the rules. However, this feeling did not last through the night. That night he got up to go to the bathroom and climbed into my bed again. The kiss that I missed finally landed accurately. Carter, don't you really know how I feel about you? I pretended to be asleep, not even my eyelashes trembled. Bob kept his eyes on my face for a long time, and finally bit my earlobe angrily. I really want to fuck you to death. I lay motionless for a long time, and only when I heard the long breathing beside the pillow did I slowly open my eyes. If I had heard this before that night, I would have been very happy. After all, there were so many times when I could have pushed it away, but in the end I didn't. Not only that, I actually enjoyed it. After 3 months of being together, I had already fallen in love with her. His strength and composure, his flamboyance, his just right overtures to kindness, and his ambiguous flirtations that are less than lovers, all have a fatal attraction to me. Like a rat in the gutter of Rue Montorgueil, longing for the freshly baked croissants in the dessert shop. Like a lone boat in the vast ocean, it cannot resist the suction effect and unconsciously approaches the glittering giant ship. But when I woke up in Bob's arms that day, I was so ignorant that I thought we had a beginning, but the conversation between his father and the housekeeper marked the end of us. His father told the housekeeper that the marriage partner, who was unable to attend Bob's birthday party due to flight delays, had returned on an early flight. Be sure to entertain well. I had lived with Bob's ordinary roommate for so long that I had forgotten about it. Rats cannot stand the light. The huge ship continued sailing towards its destination under the shimmering light. And the tattered boat will only appear after a brief encounter. Sinking silently. There is still more than half a month before the next internship salary is paid. In order to save money as soon as possible, I found a part-time job. The convenience store near the school gate pays 18 yuan per hour, and there is a subsidy of 1.5 yuan for night shifts. The labor force is extremely cheap, and the only benefit is that you can take away the expired and damaged rice balls and lunchboxes before leaving get off work. As a result, time becomes insufficient. I go to work as usual on weekdays, go straight to the convenience store after work, go back to the dormitory after changing shifts to revise my thesis under the lamp, and have to get up after sleeping for 4 hours. The dormitory manager is very nice. She knows that my night shift is half an hour later than the curfew, so she often leaves the door open for me. She comforted me, "Just wait until you graduate and get a full-time job. The hard times will eventually pass." I thought so too, just hold on, and hold on again, and then life gave me a heavy blow unexpectedly. Upon hearing that I was planning to rent a house near the company after graduation, the HR hesitated for a long time and then told me the fact in a vague way. The company's performance is not good this year, so there are no plans, so there is no way I can get a permanent job and I will have to leave after I graduate. I've given you the news. Make other plans as soon as possible. I am very grateful that she told me in advance. At least I haven't missed the end of the golden March and silver April. But in the following days, I had to be distracted by campus job fairs and running around for interviews. Some people appear calm on the surface, but they have actually been gone for a while. I continued to work as usual. After get off work, I smiled and told my colleagues that I would see them tomorrow. I squeezed into the subway during the evening rush hour with a numb face, and a faint sense of death lingered around me. Today is probably a Mercury retrograde day. When I was wiping the shelf, I accidentally broke 2 bottles of juice wine on the shelf. A day's work in vain. After sweeping up the broken glass, I sat in a daze beside the trash can. I feel so stressed, I want to do. Someone please give Bob another dose, just like last time. Pretending not to see the huge gap between us, pretending not to know that he has a marriage partner. The phone vibrated at this moment, interrupting my unrealistic fantasy. I clicked on it and it was Bob. "Why aren't you in the dormitory? The medicine is still unopened, didn't you take it?" Early the next morning after bringing back the roast duck, he went to the balcony to answer a phone call. After fighting for a long time, I came back feeling the chill of early spring dew. He was going to Italy to deal with some mess left by his grandfather. I might die there. Are you still going to pretend to sleep? I closed my eyes and struggled for a long time. When I wanted to respond, he had already turned around and got out of bed. There was no news for a whole week. I breathed a sigh of relief. At last something good had happened. Work overtime. What company requires interns to work overtime? After 2 seconds, a new message popped up. Send your location, I'll pick you up, some friends are there, let's get to know each other. The ivory tower is the last fig leaf for class differences. After graduation, the difference between cloud and mud will become more and more obvious. Integrate into his social circle? It's totally unnecessary. After all, I will no longer have any contact with Bob himself. No, I won't talk about it for now. I'm busy. After replying this, I put my phone back in my pocket and returned to the convenience store to earn the remaining 18 yuan. It was almost time for the shift to end and I had just finished counting the sales when the sliding door opened automatically with a ding. The noise of a group of men and women came in, and I stopped abruptly. Despite the noise, I was able to catch Bob's voice at once. "Stop it," he said, facing a handsome boy with delicate eyebrows and eyes. My scalp tightened and the desire to escape reached its peak, but it was too late. After he said that, he turned his head and met my eyes. The faint smile on the corner of his mouth suddenly froze, and his expression became darker and darker. "Is this what you call overtime?" His aura was so strong that the surroundings suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked at me without reservation. It makes people uncomfortable. I took off my uniform and nodded to the classmate who came to hand over the class. "I'll leave first." In the end, I didn't leave. I also have to write a report about the 2 broken bottles of wine. Fortunately, everyone's attention was soon drawn to other things, and the uncomfortable feeling of having a thorn in my back was alleviated, except for Bob, who stood in front of the counter and insisted that I give an explanation for the lie. What explanation could there be? It's just lack of money. I thought about making up an excuse and borrowing some money from Bob to tide over the difficulties, but I can pay back the money, but I can't repay the favor. I don't want to have any more entanglement with him. After a stalemate, he was the first to be defeated. "Is the flu gone?" It didn't infect me." "You have a great body then." Bob was about to say something but was interrupted by a short scream. He was stunned for a moment, his expression slightly frozen, and immediately turned and ran towards the source of the sound. I followed and saw it was that boy. Somehow I fell at a corner and my ankle was cut by the shelf. I turned my head and asked, "Have you mopped the floor?" The students who took over the shift waved their hands. "It's too late to delay yet." "There is no time to analyze the cause right now. I have to treat his wound first. I'll go get the medicine box." Bob looked unhappy. He brushed away the people around him with a cold face, bent down and picked up the person. Everyone immediately started to make a noise. In the not-so-spacious space of a convenience store, it's very jarring. "Bob, I hate your school." The boy leaned on his shoulder and glanced at me vaguely, with a kind of scolding expression that I could never learn. Bob said calmly, "I told you not to come." He seemed not to hear what I said and strode out. A wound of this severity could be treated with the emergency medicine kit at a convenience store, but he might not be confident. Hands clasped firmly at the waist. An irresistible embrace. Looking nervous. An intimacy that can't be ignored. It seems that he is a more important person. Bob paused as he passed by me and lowered his voice. "Leave the door open for me at night." I didn't respond. Turn sideways and let them go. 05. The place where the boy fell was a blind spot for the surveillance camera. I dragged the progress bar back and forth several times, but still couldn't figure out how he fell. I don't know if I will be held accountable, so I can only keep the surveillance footage for now. I left the convenience store feeling exhausted. Bob's car was parked downstairs of the dormitory. He leaned against the car door with a little scarlet burning on his fingertips. I've never seen him smoke. It seems that he is in a very bad mood at the moment. Do you want to ask for an explanation for that boy? For the wound that will heal immediately if not treated? I pinched my eyebrows and walked up to him. "Bob, I will be responsible for what happens during my shift, and he will." Bob suddenly sneered. The following words got stuck in my throat. I didn't understand the meaning of this sneer. He raised his head, and the cruelty on his face was still frightening even in the dim light. "Oh, now you know how to take responsibility." "I'm always going to lose." A small white rectangle hit me in the face, and then fell to the ground with a bang. I knew what it was at first glance. It seems that Bob just took the person to the 24-hour pharmacy on the street behind the school. I bought my pregnancy test there too. Maybe it's because I'm too tired today and I don't have the energy to panic. I closed my eyes and bent down to pick it up. The back of the neck was grabbed violently with great force. I couldn't help but groan and was forced to face Bob in a very uncomfortable posture. There was burning anger in his black eyes. "Carter, who the hell did you get pregnant?" I didn't say anything. He gritted his teeth and increased his strength. "You lied to me that it was the flu. Why didn't I know that you were such a good actor before? Speak up. You only know how to have fun but don't know how to take precautions. You can't even afford a condom?" I looked at him silently and continued to remain silent. He paused, then sneered. "Oh, that's what I was wondering. Why are you still working at a convenience store so late at night? Turns out you really can't afford it. Carter, you'll be poor your whole life." What you said was really hurtful. But it's also true. This is how my life will be. Bob let go of me, slammed the car door, stepped on the accelerator and sped away without even looking at me. The dormitory manager was woken up, and her anger turned into worry when she saw me. "Classmate, your health is important, don't work too hard, there is still a long way to go." I picked up the pregnancy test stick, put it in my pocket, and apologized to her sincerely. I was so tired that I had to walk and crawl up to the 4th floor. When I opened the dormitory door, the sweet aroma of candy hit my nose. Bob went out to handle some business, but he still thought of bringing me some gifts. I sat down at the table and stared at the full table in a daze. Finally, I picked up the chocolate that looked the cheapest. Slowly tear open the package and put it in your mouth. It's so bitter. If happiness is chocolate, then I am a dog. 06. Bob never came back. People like him don't have to worry about survival at all. If Bob's family had not encountered a crisis that year and he had not been restricted from traveling, he would not have come to this ordinary university. Nor will he meet me. I am still very busy every day, too busy to think about messy things. Half a month passed quickly, and I finally received a satisfactory offer at the tail end of Bob's recruitment. After completing the resignation process at my original company, the HR also breathed a sigh of relief. "It's a good thing I didn't delay you." I asked, "Can I get my salary in advance?" She blinked. "That won't do. It's acceptable if it doesn't work. After all, I have saved enough money for an abortion these days." The final draft of the thesis has been basically finalized and I am just waiting for the defense. There is still some time before I start working at the new company, so I can take a short break. The boy who fell did not come to pursue the matter. That's great. That's great. On the way back to school, I made an appointment with the doctor for next week. When I saw the words, "appointment successful," my tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Although we deviated slightly from the original route due to a bumpy road along the way, fortunately we managed to turn back safely in the end. Before returning to the dormitory, I bought some milk and fruit to thank the dormitory manager for her care during these days. As graduation approaches, more than half of the dormitory building is empty, and from time to time you can see people moving out with large and small bags. It will be over soon. 4 years of nothing and 3 months like a dream. That's great. That's great. As I walked briskly up 2 flights of stairs, my cell phone rang. Staring at the word, "home," flashing on the screen, the happiness in my body froze in an instant. A voice in my head said, "Don't answer it. Don't answer it, Carter." My fingers were shaking uncontrollably and I wanted to press the hang-up button, but I shivered and the phone fell to the ground, and I accidentally pressed the connect button. The man's voice came out immediately. "Are you deaf? It took you so long to answer." My joints were stiff and I slowly squatted down, my brain was numb. "What's up?" I already have the answer in my heart, but I don't want to despair so quickly. What if it's not? What if he suddenly feels guilty? Transfer some money over here. There really is no other possibility. I picked up the phone and held it tightly. For the first time, I didn't want to obey. "I just transferred the money to you, but I don't have any money now." "You don't have money, can't you find a way?" "There's nothing I can do." The other end was silent for a moment, then sneered, "Okay, I'll go find your sister." I opened my eyes wide and asked, "Where does a junior high school student get the money?" The man laughed, his voice like a devil. Every word was pronounced firmly, hitting the eardrum and roaring loudly in the heart. "She is money," he said. My breathing became rapid, my vision went dark, and I couldn't stop retching. "Don't." I heard my own voice very far away. "I'll transfer it to you. 631 blocks. Not a penny left." Staring at the empty account, an idea came to my mind. It's better not to abort this baby, just raise it to full term, and then give birth quietly in a public toilet and throw it away like in the news. Throw it in the gutter where no one can see it, and press the flush button. I was shocked by the thought. How is this different from what my biological parents do? I was thrown into the reeds by the river when I was born. It was an old bachelor in the village who picked me up. Besides me, he also picked up 2 older sisters and a younger sister. It sounds like a heartwarming and touching story, but only we ourselves know what a vicious bastard he is. Thanks to these abandoned babies, he can receive relevant subsidies every month, then turn around and lose everything. He married off the eldest sister when she reached age, and the second sister disappeared the day after he lost a lot and was asked to pay back the debt. I lied to him that I was going to work outside so that I could continue my studies with a student loan. I thought I could escape from his clutches little by little, but today I realized that I will never be able to escape. 07. I lay in the dormitory for 2 days, and the whole world was quiet. Just when I thought I would continue to sleep like this, my cell phone suddenly rang. I reflexively covered my head with the quilt and was so frightened that my body couldn't help shaking. Fortunately, it rang for a minute and then hung up. Before I could recover from my panic, the ringing sounded again. After repeating it twice, I slowly poked my head out. It's so persistent, it doesn't seem like a home call. As soon as I picked up the phone, the other party hung up again. It turned out to be Bob, staring at the screen in a daze. Is there anything else he wants? It should have been over between us a long time ago. While I was stunned, the phone rang again. This time I took it. After the call was connected, there was no words from the other end, only the sound of unsteady breathing and a bit of restrained anger. "Why did you answer it now?" "I'm sleeping." "You moved out?" I received a text message saying that the dormitory electricity bill was overdue. No wonder the light hasn't been on for the past 2 days. I thought it was broken. When he didn't hear my answer, the person on the other end became visibly angrier. "You're living with that woman?" It seems there is no need to deny it, just let it be a misunderstanding. My acquiescence was met with his long silence. So long that I thought he was dead. I looked at the screen and it was still on. "Carter, what am I to you?" The screen goes off. No one hung up the phone, my phone ran out of battery and turned off automatically. I lay there for a while longer, until the light above my head suddenly came on. My eyeballs aren't used to the light, and when I close them, they feel sore and swollen. I forced myself to stare at the light source like a masochist, then climbed out of bed. No, I can't die in the dormitory. It will cause trouble to the dormitory manager. I got out of bed and charged the phone. After turning it on, the number of unread messages was 0. It seems that paying the electricity bill is the most that Bob can do. 08. He didn't even come to the graduation ceremony. He has very few things in the dormitory, but they are all quite expensive. I don't know how he will deal with them. I quietly packed up my things and took the useless trash downstairs and threw it away. 2 classmates were about to leave with their suitcases. When they saw me, they waved at me. During these 4 years, I have been busy with various part-time jobs outside of classes, and there are less than 1 person in my class whose names I can remember. But even classmates who are not familiar with each other will take the initiative to say goodbye at the end. Noticing that their eyes lingered on my lower abdomen for a while, I pulled at the hem of my clothes awkwardly. The speed is too fast. The effects have been visible to the naked eye during this period. Later, all the internship salary I received was used for rent, and once again I had no money left to deal with this. Now it may be considered my life. I stayed there to digest my anxiety, turned around and was about to go back when someone called me from behind. "Hello, classmate, can I take a few minutes of your time?" I stopped and looked at him suspiciously. Black shirt, gelled hair, strong scent of perfume. It seems to have been lingering here for a long time. Subconsciously taking a step back, he came closer with a smile. Have you found a job yet? If you haven't found one yet, I have an easy job for you. Is this a headhunter? Coming to the living park to look for employees late at night? I became alert and shook my head repeatedly. No, the job has been decided. The man insisted, blocking my way. Then you can do a part-time job, squeeze out some time at night. It's much more cost-effective than working. Look at you, you are so beautiful. It would be a pity not to use it. I understand. It's not a serious job. Thank you, no need. Just as she was about to take a step, he grabbed her wrist. Well, let's get to know each other first. My car is right there. I'll take you to have a look. If you still don't want to do it, I'll take you back. Let me go. The man was incredibly strong and I couldn't break free. Just as I was about to take out my phone, a fist blew past my ear. The dull sound of fists hitting flesh exploded before my eyes. The man's head was hit off-center, and he stopped pretending and rushed over with a ferocious look on his face. But when he saw the person next to me, his expression froze and turned into fear. Bob. Bob pushed the man to the ground and said in a cold tone, "Which group are you from?" Bob, it's a misunderstanding. It's really a misunderstanding. 3. I really didn't know this was yours. Isn't this just a coincidence? 2. Bob, I was wrong. Please forgive me this time. Bob's face was full of regret. He exerted force with his hands, and the person on the ground immediately wailed, and finally squeezed out 2 words with difficulty. Bob was stunned when he heard that. The man took the opportunity to struggle free and ran away crawling. After not seeing each other for a while, Bob's arrogance has calmed down a lot, but his ruthlessness has become sharper. I walked around him. Let's stay in the rented house tonight. He can't force his way into the house. Where are you going? Not surprisingly, he was stopped. Go home. Home. The tone rose subtly, then fell without warning. With that woman? He grabbed my shoulder and took me to the dormitory building without giving me any room to refuse. What are you doing? I'm not going back to the dormitory. I always feel like something is going to happen when I go back. Bob hugged her tighter. Is the medicine box still there? Ah. I'm hurt. 09. Finally went upstairs. The so-called wound is the broken skin left by the beating just now. I applied medicine to him and he gasped in pain. His previous injury was obviously much more serious, but he didn't say a word. Is it that my method has changed? It hurts. Anyway, I'll endure it and you won't feel bad for me. Considering what happened just now, I suspect he is acting. That person was found to cooperate with you, right? No. A hint of coldness appeared on his face. I don't know what his purpose is, but I will definitely give you an explanation. Changing the subject, he held my hand. For safety reasons, you should stay with me first. We have to leave quickly. I quickly broke free, packed my medicine box, and took my luggage out from under the table. Bob just watched the whole process without saying a word. Something unusual happened. As I walked to the door, my whole body felt lighter, and when I came to my senses, he had already picked me up by the waist and placed me on the table. There must be a demon. Bob, don't mess around. Bob turned a deaf ear to her and pushed his way in between her legs, pressing down like a mountain. Let me go, you King kid. Dream. You bastard. Really? He buried his head in my neck and took a deep breath. Carter, I missed you so much. My heart was tightly gripped, and a feeling of bitterness spread. I still can't resist the attraction of croissants and giant ships. I hugged him back unconsciously, but when I realized what I was doing, I quickly let go. Bob paused, then raised his head and looked at me, his eyes flashing with surprise. Carter, there is no such thing as misunderstanding in the world. It's just a coincidence. You like me too, don't you? You and her were just an accident, so you have to take responsibility, right? I tried to look away. No. He obviously didn't believe it. I can make it up to her. I can give her anything she wants, except you. Carter, stay with me. But there is already someone by your side. I stood there, just a redundant, immoral existence. Being Bob's mistress is no different from going to a nightclub with that man. The light was against my eyes, so I couldn't see his expression clearly. The rough palm rubbed my cheek, causing a slight pain. There was an indescribable pleasure mixed with the pain. It was hard not to think of that chaotic night when these hands touched my entire body. I tried hard to suppress the gasp rolling in my throat, and my voice was floating when I spoke. Bob, the tail sound is blocked. Bob's kiss was so aggressive that it almost took away all my oxygen. My head started to feel dizzy. In a fuzzy state of mind, my shirt was unbuttoned one by one. His hands slid into his chest and squeezed it mercilessly. When I touched my lower abdomen, I woke up with a start. Bob also stopped moving, breathing slightly, and looked down at the slight bulge under his palm. Thin arms and legs, why is there a belly? I hurriedly pushed him away and buttoned my clothes with trembling hands. Bob was not angry when he was pushed away. The panic and nervousness on his face were no less than mine. "Carter, are you sick?" No, I just ate too much and got fat. I'm going back now." He held me down with one hand, and with the other hand he lifted up my shirt and touched my belly again. Very light, but trembling slightly. "Carter, go to the hospital." I was about to refuse, but Bob interrupted me. "To the hospital?" Decisive. I knew I couldn't hide. He straightened my clothes and turned to get the car keys. I looked at his back and closed my eyes. "Bob, it's useless for you to say anything now, you have to go. I am pregnant." The keys thumped to the floor. "What did you say?" In Bob's private hospital, I finally understood why I was abandoned by my biological parents. There is a congenital chromosome abnormality, with one extra chromosome in the 23 pairs, so there is an extra set of female organs in the body. Is a freak. It wasn't discovered before because the sexual organs in the body hadn't developed, but now, under external stimulation and the effects of emotional hormones, they have normal functions. There are two options: direct surgical removal to preserve male identity, or conservative hormone treatment to preserve the child. The answer is self-explanatory. That must be. My heart suddenly ached. I hesitated. Bob smoked for a long time at the end of the corridor. After entering the ward, he leaned against the wall without saying a word. After a long while, he sat down beside the bed, picked up the knife on the bedside table, and slowly peeled the apple. "The doctors here are top-notch, and the surgery doesn't have any major risks, so don't worry too much." I didn't say anything. After carefully examining his expression, she stammered, "Bob, can you lend me some money?" The apple skin suddenly broke. Bob looked at me, his expression normal, but the veins on the back of his hands were bulging. "No, you don't have to pay for the rehabilitation treatment after the surgery." Having said that, his meaning was very clear. "But I want to protect." "Carter!" Bob's voice suddenly rose. "Wake up, that's a rapist child." My chest felt suffocated. I clutched the corner of the quilt tightly and whispered back, "No." The ward suddenly became quiet. Anger froze on his face and slowly turned into disbelief. He asked in a trembling voice, "Are you doing this voluntarily?" He was the one who asked the question, and he was also the one who covered my mouth when I opened it. Unable to utter a word, I nodded. "Bob let me go." "A long time." "Who?" "Ah. I'll give you the money and I'll raise the bastard, but I have to know who that damned man is." I raised my eyes to glance at the furious Bob and pursed my lips. If he knew the truth, Bob's family would definitely kill him. I don't want this. It's hard to describe this wonderful feeling. In the short life of more than 20 years, family, love, and money did not belong to me, but now there is a life that truly belongs to me. According to the timeline, we were together every day that month, except for my birthday when I blacked out. The housekeeper said you went home with someone else that night, but I can't find out whose car you got into. Carter, who are you attracted to? Do you know what kind of people these guests are? They are ruthless and you want to mess with them? I slowly shrank back into the quilt. Bob, there is no future for me and that person. It doesn't matter if you don't lend it to me. I can find a way myself. 11. Bob gave in. The condition was that I had to live in his house. I disagreed. Forget it. The house I rent is pretty good, and I'm about to start working at the company, so I'll get my salary soon. Although half of the money had to be used to pay off student loans, The other half was taken away by the old bachelor. Bob made another concession. I'll buy a suite near your company, just for the two of us. What is this, a mistress in a luxurious house? Seeing that I was still shaking my head, Bob frowned. Carter, have you forgotten who I am? If I want to force you, I have 10,000 ways to put you on the operating table. He's right. Finally, we agreed that I would continue to live in the house I rented, and he would have the key, so he could come to my house at any time and no one could stop me. I had to stay at his house at least once a week. Fortunately, I have the initiative most of the time and am not too passive. The next day after I agreed, Bob transferred a large sum of money to my account, noting that it was a voluntary gift. I poked him. It's a loan, why write it as a gift? He replied to me after a while. This month's bastard appeasement fee, see how strong your stepfather is? Don't make things difficult for you. I feel sad. It would be nice if he didn't have anyone to marry. I can't imagine how happy I would be. After a while, he made another stroke. You don't have to pay back the principal, but I will charge interest. I took out my calculator and started pressing some numbers. Okay, this one is for my salary. However, that night as soon as Bob came in, he pressed me to the entrance and kissed me until my whole body became weak. Then I knew what interest meant. She was so weak that she couldn't even support herself, so he carried her sideways into the room. Fortunately, his physical condition was such that he couldn't do the next step except drooling all over me. After working until late at night, I went to the kitchen to cook a midnight snack. It was late at night and everyone was asleep, with only the sound of the cooking pot bubbling. I stared at the blue flames in a daze. Days like this will end one day. What should I do then? I was feeling depressed, so I checked my account balance and instantly felt relieved. Figured it out. Since we can't change the current situation for now, let's just enjoy it first. If people do not pursue money, they will be punished by heaven and earth. When he gets married, I will run away with the money. Bob hugged me from behind and rubbed his chin on my shoulder. Honey, I'm hungry. Bring the bowl here. I bought the bowl on a second-hand platform at school on the day Bob moved into the dormitory. It only cost $2. Just a pair. At that time, I didn't expect that we would develop alternative feelings in our extremely simple life day after day. After Bob finished his noodles, he started eating me. I'm so sleepy. Aren't you tired of it? Not sick of it. He raised his head from my neck and rubbed my waist. It's just a little uncomfortable. I sighed and crossed my legs. Be gentle. A week passed quickly, and after visiting the hospital, Bob took me home. My bed is huge. Bob gave the direction and suddenly said this. I know. After rolling all night, some corners are still dry. He tilted his head slightly. You know. I am really talented at making up stories without batting an eyelid. I saw it in my dream. What kind of dream is there about my bed? Am I in the bed? You guess. The car drove smoothly into the villa area. Don't guess, I'll make the dream come true later. As soon as I walked in and saw the boy sitting on the sofa, I knew that this dream would not come true for a while. He stood up and smiled. Bob, you are back. I have been waiting for you for a long time. When he saw me, his expression froze slightly. This is, a convenience store worker. A familiar subtle hostility. I kind of know who he is. Bob's marriage partner. I really want to escape. I nodded to him reluctantly and moved away a little without making a sound. Just as Bob was about to speak, his cell phone rang. He lowered his head, glanced at the screen, and frowned slightly. Carter, go to my room and wait for me. I'll take care of something and be right back. Is it appropriate to say this in front of the real person? That's not appropriate, Bob. Of course I didn't go to his room. I sat down on the sofa stiffly. As soon as the boy saw Bob leave, his smile disappeared instantly. He slowly picked up the teacup and glanced at me. Bob and I have known each other since birth. We were supposed to get engaged in early fall. Did you know that? I was so ashamed that I awkwardly put my knees together, not knowing where to put my hands. I'm sorry, I'll leave him alone as soon as possible. As soon as he said this, a hint of surprise flashed across his face, but he quickly returned to his contemptuous attitude. Leave? Are you willing to leave? I lowered my head. To be honest, it's Bob who won't let me go right now. The boy put down his teacup and finally looked me in the face. He looked at me carefully for a long time, his eyebrows raised frivolously, a hint of joy appeared on his face. Oh, you want to leave then? You really don't like Bob? Unimportant. He handed me his phone. Darren, add me as a friend and I'll help you. I was surprised. Help me? Why the sudden change of attitude? Yes, to help you get rid of him. I added it doubtfully and noted my name. Bob's family is powerful, but there are places they can't reach. I can send you out, and then bring you back when the dust settles here. For some reason I felt that this set of rhetoric sounded very familiar, but after thinking about it for a while, I couldn't remember it. Where are you going? Darren's eyebrows were curved and his smile was rippling, but his eyes were deep. Of course it's a place he can't find or control. I still felt strange. Why are you helping me? Of course, I'm helping myself. Bob came back soon looking grim. Where are the others? I was frightened by him. Go back. Bob raised his hand and touched my face, and his expression softened a little. I have to go out, you go to sleep first. My subconscious told me that he was going to find Darren. I feel a little uncomfortable. Don't want him to leave. I was shocked. How could I have such an idea? Is it the result of love brain or the effect of hormones? Whatever it is, it's terrifying. I am slowly becoming the person I despise. If I continue like this, one day I will willingly become one of Bob's kept mistresses, doing nothing every day and waiting for his patronage wholeheartedly. Absolutely not. Bob didn't come home all night. I stared at the ceiling on his big bed all night and decided to go back to my own home at dawn. When I went out, I met the butler, and he nodded slightly at me. I felt a little embarrassed. I'm sorry. After all, he had agreed on a confession with me last time, sent me back to school, and I promised not to bother him again. He shook his head. It's the young master's own choice. Bob's choice was to coax me and then stay with the real marriage partner all night. I'm a little sleepy and tired. I went home and slept until noon. When I opened my eyes and saw Bob's sleeping face, my brain was so slow that I couldn't think straight. When will you come back? He held me in his arms using his hands and feet without waking me up. She held her breath and slowly retreated, but before she could get out of his arms, he hugged her tightly and all her efforts were wasted. I couldn't tell whether he was asleep or awake. But no matter what state she was in, he could always kiss her randomly with his eyes closed. Thinking back to the first time, he was also confused and mistook me for his ex. I want to get married, he said vaguely. Daydream? The passion that had just been aroused suddenly receded. It's already noon, and the dream can only become a daydream. Well, go ahead and tie the knot. Bob opened his eyes, his vision clear. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He grabbed my hand and kissed my fingertips. Wait a minute, not now. How long are we waiting for? Early autumn? Reeds bloom and ear in summer, and then wither after autumn. 14. Bob might have been tired last night and slept until the afternoon. I had just finished replying to an email, and when I turned around I saw him, still looking sleepy. Want to have dinner? I'm hungry. I don't know how many copies of the key were made for Bob, one for each of the chef, organizer, and nutritionist. They came one by one, as quietly as the agents. He finished his work silently and left quietly. Bob's eating habits are completely opposite to his personality, very elegant. While chewing slowly, he suddenly asked, "Why did you reject the job?" The lotus root slices slipped off the chopsticks. Clip it again, and it slips off again. Bob picked it up steadily and put it in my bowl. I chewed my food. Did you see that? I suddenly don't like it very much. I'll find a suitable one later. Don't look for me anymore. Can't I afford to support you? I know. Just lie down and let me take care of you. I answered simply, raised my head with a smile, and was surprised to see Bob's brows frowned. So you were just talking? Of course not. He stared at me steadily, his face calm and his eyes deep and bottomless. I'm just worried that you are just talking. I took a mouthful of rice and stuffed my cheeks full. I imitated his tone and said vaguely, "Of course not." After the meal, the cleaner appeared out of nowhere, washed the dishes skillfully, and disappeared without a trace. That's amazing. I was amazed. The people under him are so capable. Bob should be even better. How can I not be powerful if I am going to be the head of Bob's family in the future? But it's also very hard. In line with the principle of leaving no regrets, I mustered up the courage to ask, "Bob, what do you like about me? After all, you and I are not from the same world. You are not from Earth? That's not what I mean. It's just not the same circle or class." Back in the outdoor development class, those idiots wasted all the good resources and made a bunch of pig food and were still smug about it. Do you think I'm in the same circle as them? He was talking about what happened in his freshman year, and in the end I used local materials to clean up the mess. Bob had been missing in school for the past 4 years. That was one of the few times we interacted with each other. I didn't expect he still remembered it. "I like your breath of life." "I don't agree. I'm just surviving." Bob hugged me and said softly, "The 3 months I spent with you were the most relaxing time in my life." All of a sudden, I remembered a lot of things, the countless new and old wounds on his body, and the words he said in a calm tone, "I might die there. Maybe we are all just surviving. But don't worry, there won't be any more dangerous situations like that in the future." The old man was so angry before because I secretly eliminated some gray industries. Then why did we break up twice? Oh, the second time was because of Darren. We had an engagement designated by the elders. When I was a kid, I was kidnapped, and Darren's grandfather took a bullet for me. The last time I flew. Suddenly I don't want to listen anymore. It's hard to tell whether he doesn't want to hear about Darren and his past, or he doesn't want to hear him open up his old wounds. I interrupted him. "Bob, didn't the doctors say last time that you can have that in 3 months? He suddenly stopped talking and touched my head with amusement. "Don't seduce me." "No? The doctor said it's okay?" He slowly stopped smiling. "Are you serious?" "Certainly." Bob's Adam's apple rolled and his eyes became darker and darker. His eyes fell on my lower abdomen and he shook his head again. "I'm not a beast." I lowered my head and blushed. "But I am." 15. My belly is a little bigger and my lower back hurts all the time. Now I almost couldn't stand up straight. Bob had dismissed the people stationed near the rental house beforehand, and now it was late at night and there was no one around. It is reasonable to suspect that the other households in this building are no longer the original tenants. I tightened my coat and went downstairs in the night. The black car stopped at the intersection as expected. I slowly walked towards it, towards the new future I had chosen for myself. As the door opened, a strong smell of perfume hit my nose. Something in my brain snapped. I slowly raised my eyes and saw a familiar face. The guy in the black shirt who pulled me downstairs of the dormitory. The top of my head seemed to explode, and I instinctively turned around and tried to run, but was pulled into the carriage. The car door slammed shut and my heart sank. Finished. Darren, the co-pilot, turned his head. There were several wounds on his face, and his smile was chilling in the moonlight. I tried to stay calm and reached out to open the car door. I changed my mind. "Let me out." Of course, the door couldn't be opened. I don't know what happened. Darren looked almost insane, with a suffocating sense of danger surging around him. "Carter, right? Let's go to hell together." "Who wants to go to hell with you?" I frantically reached for my phone, but the moment I touched it, the man in the black shirt snatched it away and stabbed me with a knife. The blood in my body ran cold. "Darren, I've already decided to leave. Why can't you just let me go?" He sneered. "If I let you go, who will let me go? Bob and I have been through life and death together for more than 20 years, and how long have you known him? Why would he do this to me for you? What happened to you?" "I don't know." He was really unreasonable and seemed to be on the verge of madness. I knew that if I didn't get out of the car I would be dead, so I started banging on the door frantically. After just 2 hits, he was restrained by the man in the black shirt and couldn't move. It seemed like we were the only ones left on the street. Empty. No one can save me. Darren just looked at me quietly. Desperate? I was also so desperate when Bob lectured me. After that, he gave the order in a cold voice. Drive. 2 words sentenced me to death. I slumped back into my seat and closed my eyes. But the car didn't start. Darren yelled at the driver, "Drive? Are you deaf?" The driver responded calmly, "Not all of them have arrived yet." "What are you talking about?" As soon as he finished speaking, the car door opened. Bob stepped into the car and sat next to me. "Now we are all here." Darren's face turned pale instantly, and he shouted at the man in the black shirt in a trembling voice, "What are you still standing there for?" The man in the black shirt quickly dropped the knife in his hand. "Boss, I avoided the battery and practiced privately more than a dozen times." Darren froze, his eyes wide in disbelief. "You fucking betrayed me." "So what?" He touched my arm with a chuckle. "Does it hurt?" "I'm holding back." Bob glared at him and he immediately withdrew his hand, shrank aside and dared not say a word. The person who frantically pulled the car door became Darren. Of course the door couldn't be opened. Bob slowly raised his leg and kicked the back of the passenger seat hard. "Darren, I gave you a chance to live." 16. The second time Bob broke up with Bob's family was because he wanted to break off the engagement. As compensation, he even flew abroad to help the Yen family settle some old disputes. I also unexpectedly learned that the kidnapping case that year was actually directed and acted by Darren's grandfather. He sacrificed one person to save the precarious family. Bob chose to forgive Darren because of their years of friendship. As long as Darren gave up his unrealistic fantasies, they could continue to be good brothers. Unfortunately, Darren was not satisfied with this and tried to lure me to a club, which completely ruined me. Even after being severely taught a lesson by Bob, he still didn't give up. "So you knew I was going to run away?" My legs were still weak from fear. Bob put me on the bed and snorted. "When you transferred all the money I gave you to your sister, I naively thought that you finally accepted me. Oh, and now you're planning to leave me. I've been deceived by you so many times that I'm already resistant to being deceived. Carter, you're acting so abnormal tonight. Do you think I'm stupid?" Watching him unbutton his cuffs slowly and steadily, I swallowed my saliva. Luckily there was no danger. Go to sleep. Bob leaned over and grabbed my chin. Nothing else to tell me?" I knew it. There is no turning back tonight. Darren screamed before he was taken away. "If the flight hadn't been delayed that day, I would have slept with you, not you." Bob almost ate me in the car. "Carter, I thought I had a wet dream all night on my birthday." The hot kiss fell. Now I want to verify it myself, whether it was a dream or not. I whimpered, "Bob, you're a beast." He laughed. "Yes, I am.